Shabbat Shalom. Tonight, we turn once again to the book of Exodus. Last week, we read a portion from the Torah called Yitro, named for Moses' father-in-law. That episode in Yitro is also a moment that the people have their first experience of revelation, of receiving Torah on Sinai. This week, we transition from Yitro into what's called Parashat Mishpatim. Mishpatim means rules or laws. So we're now in chapter 19 of the book of Exodus, and we read 18 chapters so far that have all been a narrative. The story of the people's exodus from Egypt, the story of Pharaoh and the plagues, the story of counting of the people. So we have this entire narrative in our book of Exodus, and then all of a sudden, chapter 19 arrives, the narrative stops, and we receive mishpatim, laws or rules. So we have this pause in our narrative. And some modern commentators, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, comments on this idea. Why now do we stop and receive laws? We could say that maybe this is the perfect time. The people have just experienced revelation, the handing down of the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai. Now is a perfect time to receive rules and laws. But why does the narrative stop? So Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be a blessing, he asks, why here? Why don't we continue in our story and our narrative, leading to the next drama? For those of you who were in Torah study with me last week, we talked about this is the moment we see in the movies, the thunder and the lightning, and the people are trembling, and God is speaking to Moses. And then Mishpatim begins. Now, Rabbi Sacks says that there is a good reason for this. He says that great leaders have the ability to connect a large vision with highly specific details. Without the vision, the details are tiresome. And so we ask ourselves, what is the vision of Mishpatim? What is the vision of this Torah portion? And we read that it's to become a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And each episode up to this point in our narrative marks the DNA and describes the DNA of who our people are, the Israelites. But the reality is the people need more than just stories, more than just narrative to become a nation. As Rabbi Sacks says, the role of the Torah is twofold: to translate historical experience into detailed legislation. In Parashat Mishpatim, vision becomes detail and narrative becomes law. So we transition from this beautiful and powerful narrative from Parashat Yitro. All the people witnessed the thunder and the lightning, the blare of the horn and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they fell back and stood at a distance. "You speak to us," they said to Moses, "and we will obey. But let not God speak to us, lest we die." So Moses goes and tells God that the people are scared. You can't speak directly to them. And so then God speaks again to Moses, and Moses comes back to the people with these mishpatim, these rules. And the opening line of Parshat Mishpatim says, "These are the rules that you shall set before them." So we move from this powerful, full body experience. We experience the visual and we get a sense of what was really happening viscerally to the people. And then we say, these are the rules. And there's a lot of rules, and they're not all related to one thing, but a few that we'll focus on tonight. One, it starts out talking about how to treat a slave. Now, we know that this might be really personal to the Israelites at this moment, as they have just left Egypt, been freed from Egypt. And so the very first rule that we get in Mishpatim regards a slave. It says, when you acquire a male slave, he shall serve 6 years. In the 7th year, he shall go free without payment. So in this first rule in Mishpatim, we learn that no one will be subjected to slavery for their entire life. A few chapters later, we receive another rule. Exodus 22, part of Mishpatim, says, "You shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." Now, we might recognize this line. We say this as part of our Passover Seder. It's in our Haggadah. This is a rule that we repeat over and over and over again to ourselves. It's something that the Israelites experienced very closely to themselves, but maybe for some of us, it is not a personal experience that we've had. And so in Rabbi Sachs' teaching about this concept of movement from narrative to law, he brings this idea of a teaching from a professor from Yale. He writes on this idea of nomos versus narrative. And he says that nomos is the vision of the ideal society, and then behind the nomos is a narrative, the story about how the visionaries of that society come to hold these ideals. And we know in our world today and in history that it's not often that narrative and law meet. The Torah is unique in that regard. Last week, I had a conversation with Michael at Torah study, and we were talking about this idea, right? The writers of the Constitution, we don't know the narrative. We don't know the stories behind why they created some of these rules, this constitution that we still have today. In the Torah, though, we have the opportunity to understand a little bit as to why these rules might have been created, because we have both the narrative and the law as they combine hand in hand. So as we think about our Torah portion this week, and how it applies to our lives today, some of these rules may seem obsolete, and many of them are still very much core to who we are as Jews today. It's a balance of the history, the stories, the narrative, the vision of the Jewish people, and the law. How do we get step by step to or toward that vision of becoming a nation and a holy people? Shabbat Shalom.